This video is probably my most highly anticipated video of the year. I have been waiting to make this video since January of 2023. I make this video every year. I think I've been making it for the past 2 years. I think I have 2 of these videos already. This is so scary because I have like under 30 minutes to talk about 80 books. Yeah, so we're just gonna get right into it. Last year, 2022, I know we're in 2024, so technically not last year, but 2022, I ended up reading, I think, 45 books, around like 40 something books, which that's incredible. I just want to preface this video by saying if you read 1 book, if you read 0 books, I'm proud of you. If you read 200 books, I'm proud of you. Like, I really want to stress that it does not matter how many books you read this year. And I know it's super hard to break away from that, to kind of feel okay with the amount of books that you read. I'm still struggling with it. Like, I think I read 79. I'm considering it 80 because I finished 1 book like after midnight on New Year's Eve, so it didn't count toward my Goodreads goal, but I'm counting it. But my Goodreads says 79, and I was getting upset because I was like, I could have added 1 more, I could have read 1 more, I could have gotten to 80. Like, no. If you're feeling that way about your goal, please don't, because no matter how many books you read this year, whether it was 0 or 300, I am so proud of you. And you should be so proud of yourself as well, because you spent time learning, growing, gaining knowledge. I have technically read 80 books this year, and that is incredible. Huge jump, practically double what I read last year, and I am so proud of myself. I don't want to describe the books because you can look them up on your own if they sound interesting, because we don't have time for that. Frankly, like, I don't have time to be sitting here discussing 80 books and what they're about. I'm just going to be giving you my personal review. I'm going to put the star rating on the screen. I'll put my Goodreads stats up here for right now so you can check those out while I'm talking. The star rating will be at the bottom of the screen somewhere. I don't know what corner, but I don't want to like go into depth talking about the star rating that I gave everything. If you want to follow me on Goodreads, I always have it linked in my bio on YouTube, but I'll link it specifically in the description of today's video, so you can go follow me over there. I friend everybody back. I'll add you if you add me. Let's get into this. This is crazy. Okay, so this was my reading journal. Shout out to Bestie Rachel for getting me this at the beginning of last year. My aunt and uncle actually got me one for 2024, and it's so beautiful. I'll show you next year. 2024's reading wrap up. Crazy to think about that. You Have Matched by Emma Lord. This book is inspired by The Parent Trap. It gave me The Parent Trap vibes. I absolutely loved it. I think it was a really well written like rom-com love story with so much depth and like heartfelt emotions that it doesn't feel like one-dimensional. Like, there were so many other characters involved, so much depth and detail. The Nutcracker. I read this last year around Christmas time. It was right after New Year's. I think I finished it like on New Year's Eve. And this was such a cool, interesting read for me because I love the story of the Nutcracker. It did take me kind of a while. I did finish it in 1 night, which I'm very proud of, but I did end up having to skim a lot. It was written in the classic way of writing, you know, from like way back when. So it's written like a classic, and that kind of made me like not really click with it as much. Obviously it's a classic, and I'm very happy that I read this. Next, I read The Contender, which was actually for school. I'll put the pictures of the books that I don't have with me or that I borrowed, I'm loaning out to friends, read for school. I'll put the pictures on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. The Contender is like a wrestling story, and I thought it was interesting, but not really my kind of thing. Again, it was a read for school, so I was forced to read it, and not something I would have picked up on my own. So I liked that I branched out, but it wasn't really my favorite. Next, we have Truly Devious, which is a mystery. One of the few mysteries I read this year. I want to read more in 2024. I really like the vibe of this book. It was very much like dark academia, set at an academy, huge mystery going on. It gave me a Good Girl's Guide to Murder vibes, so if you like that book, you might like this one. I think this would make a really great TV show. Like, I know A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is being made into a TV show. This one would make another amazing TV show. I think this one is worth a read. Honestly, not one of my favorites from this year, but I am really glad I read it, and I want to read the next book, which is The Vanishing Stair. It's on my TBR cart. Next, I actually read a book that Bestie Rachel wrote. I don't know if she's publishing this at all. It's called The Letters of Milo St. James, and I loved this book because she wrote it. Obviously, it's going to be amazing. We write together all the time, so it was so cool to be able to hold this book in my hands and know that this literally came out of her brain. Isn't that crazy? I actually read this twice, so I counted it 2 times on my Goodreads challenge because rereads count, guys. I read this book a whole second time to help her make her first round of edits, and I actually annotated her copy. Like, she sent it to me annotated, and I sent it back even more annotated. I recommend doing that to get your edits done because it was so like pen pally mailing back and forth. Next, I read You've Reached Sam. This book did not hit the way that I wanted it to. I honestly was expecting to cry a whole lot more, and I was in the mood to become sad from a book, and it just wasn't giving me that. Like, it was sad, yes, it talked about grief a lot, so definitely look up trigger warnings and everything, but it wasn't as sad as I was hoping. If you have any really sad book recommendations down below that's not like too far on the spectrum, getting to like A Little Life, I don't want that. Sadder than this, but not as sad as A Little Life. If you have recommendations for me, leave them down below because I want a good cry sometimes. I have a reading vlog on that book and the next book, which is The Cruel Prince. So if you want to see an in-depth review of that, I'll try and link it down below, but it's somewhere on my channel for you to go see. I have it in the thumbnail and everything. The Cruel Prince, I actually read this whole series. I don't really know why they're not in order, but we'll just talk about the whole series. The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. This was honestly one of my top series of 2023. If I mess up and say 2024 at any point in this video, I apologize because sometimes that happens. I say one thing and I mean another thing. The writing is so lyrical. There isn't a ton of romance, which I feel like is where people get let down with the series, so go into it not expecting a ton of romance. There is kind of a lot in Queen of Nothing, but go into the first couple of books not expecting it, and I think you're gonna have the best time. I desperately want to annotate these, and I think I will in 2024, simply because the writing was some of the most beautiful writing I have literally ever read, and I just strongly disagree with anyone who says that these books aren't good, because they are really good. I read a lot of childhood series, like books from my childhood this year, which I love because this year was kind of the year of girlhood with like Barbie and Taylor Swift and like healing your inner child. So I am super happy that I read all of these series from when I was little and kind of revisited the way they made me feel. So I reread my Wide Awake Princess series. It's retelling the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. I absolutely love this series so much. Like, it honestly hit so much harder for me now that I'm a teenager. Then I read The Upside of Falling, which I actually borrowed from Rachel, so I don't have a physical copy. The Upside of Falling was one of the best books I read this year. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's one of the best like rom-coms out there for YA. It made me feel so warm, fuzzy, cozy. It wasn't cringy. It's hard to explain. Give it a read because it made me feel like I was reading a Wattpad story, but in a good way. You know how Wattpad can be questionable? It was like Wattpad if Wattpad wasn't questionable. Then I read And Then There Were None for another English book for school, and this was honestly my favorite book that I've ever read for school. It was so good. My first Agatha Christie novel. The mystery, so good. The ending, I didn't love the ending as much as the rest of the book. I kind of got confused as to like who did it. I still don't really remember the person who did it, but that could be a me thing. Like, I never really remember the person who kills someone or who does a crime in mysteries. I don't know if that's just a me thing. It's just kind of a weird thing I have. Next, I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, my first Lynn Painter book of the year. Loved this book, gave it 5 stars. Reminded me of like early 2000s rom-coms, like Clueless, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, 10 Things I Hate About You. If you like those rom-coms, read this book because it did not disappoint. I understand all of the references in Lynn Painter books, which I feel like is hard to say for some books because especially if the author is a lot older than you, you're not going to get all of the references that they include. But I literally got every single reference. Like, they reference Gilmore Girls, they'll reference Gossip Girl, they'll reference like a social media thing, and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Next, I read Tweet Cute, another romance rom-com type of YA book that I actually recommend. This was kind of a retelling of You've Got Mail because they are anonymous chatting on a chat app while in real life they're enemies, and their families own like competing businesses in New York City. So you get the city vibes, you get high school vibes, you get like almost prep school vibes. They kind of went to a fancy high school. A Twitter war. It was so good. I recommend it. Also talked a lot about food. So if you're a foodie or you like reading books about food, read that book. Next, I read all of the Confectionately Yours books, another series I read when I was little. I actually used to read these like right before bed on school nights, so it really brought me back to that kind of like bubble book feeling. Rachel and I call those kinds of books that you read before bed and like only before bed to get cozy and fall asleep, bubble book books, because you feel like you're in a cozy warm bubble. So these were all my bubble books when I was little. Then I actually reread Siege and Storm because Shadow and Bone season 2 came out. So upset. Don't even talk to me about them canceling it before season 3. Don't really know what went on with that. But I absolutely loved season 2 because Siege and Storm was my favorite book. So I definitely wanted to reread that book before the show came out. Loved doing that. And I love Nikolai. So it was a great time. Then I read the entire ACOTAR series, which is fun. I didn't love those books. I don't have any of them because I borrowed them from Rachel. It's one of Rachel's favorite series, if not her favorite series ever. So I totally get anybody who loves ACOTAR. It just wasn't for me. I'm more of a Throne of Glass girly. I think Throne of Glass is a little bit more realistic, fantasy, than ACOTAR was, and the writing's a little better in my opinion in Throne of Glass, which I also read this year. We'll get into that in a second. So ACOTAR wasn't my favorite. My favorite book in the series was A Court of Mist and Fury, Akamoth. Least favorite was either A Court of Silver Flames or ACOTAR, like the first one. And I liked the little novella in between, and ACOWAR was super strategic, and I loved the war and like planning and everything. I think it's a good series if you're getting into fantasy. If you are a fantasy lover, probably not for you because it's a little bit unrealistic, and I would recommend Throne of Glass for that instead. The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. It was a Groundhog Day trope on Valentine's Day, I'm pretty sure. If you like Gilmore Girls, the guy in this book is literally described as Jess Mariano. So if you like Jess, if you're team Jess like me, read this book because I absolutely loved it, and it gave me all of like the cozy, warm, non-cringy rom-com vibes. Then I actually read How the King of Elfhame, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is kind of like a little continuation extra type of book in the Cruel Prince series. I loved this book. Actually, I feel like if you don't like those books, like the Cruel Prince series, don't read it. But if you do, read it because the art in this book, it's just so beautiful. And it's all these short stories that take place before the series, during the series, and after the series. Oh my gosh. Then I read the entire Shatter Me series, one of my biggest accomplishments of the year. I literally read the whole ACOTAR series, the whole Shatter Me series, and I read almost all of the Throne of Glass series. So I'm feeling very, very proud of myself right now, actually. All these books, I read them. All in 1 year, I read them. I absolutely loved this series. One of my new obsessions. I feel like people don't like them because they're described as like boring by other people. I personally think I can see that, and for some reason I didn't find that. Like, I can see how some parts might be a little slow, might drag a little, but honestly, like, as a whole, the series is so worth it. But again, it depends on the person. I don't love dystopian stuff, and I enjoyed it. It gave me like sort of the Hunger Games vibes, but also totally different. I actually reread the entire Inheritance Games trilogy before the Brothers Hawthorne came out. Favorite series in the world. Got the paperbacks all for Christmas. I also have all the hardcovers now, so I feel very complete, and my whole shrine up there is complete now. If anybody asks me for like a recommendation, it doesn't even matter what genre they like or what books they've read. Read these. Mystery, romance, hint of fantasy vibes, even though it's not fantasy. Everything you could ever want in these books. I'm getting everyone I know to read them, and you should also be a part of that and read them for me. I then read Daughter of the Pirate King, which I borrowed from Rachel. I borrow like everything from Rachel, so don't be surprised. Daughter of the Pirate King did not hit the way that it should have hit. I honestly have a very strong, not love-hate, it's more hate than love, actually, relationship with this book. I hate saying I hated a book, but if I were to ever say that I hated a book, it would probably be this one. I wrote a whole rant in my book journal. The writing was a little childish. The main character was supposed to be like the strong, best female pirate vibes ever, but she really wasn't that smart. I kind of outsmarted her a lot in this book, and everybody else did as well. But then they also would say like, oh, she is so smart. And it's like, no, babe, did you see what she did last chapter? Because I don't think you did. Her name was Alosa. She was really cocky and full of herself, and I just don't vibe with that. And also, the romance was insta-love done poorly, where they would like hate each other, get wounded, get turned on, hate each other again, have to clean wounds again. Back and forth like that. Took place on a ship, and then an island, and then like a little port city, and that was all that happened in the book. So, if you like that book, no offense by what I just said, I'm really happy for you, and I'm glad you found a book you like. That was really rude. I'm so sorry. Next, I read Romeo and Juliet again for school. First time reading a Shakespeare play. Really enjoyed it, actually. Surprisingly, gave it 4 stars. Everybody in my class was like, this is the most boring thing ever. Maybe I'm just a sucker for romance. Maybe I'm just a sucker for like fantasy vibes. Absolutely loved it. It slayed. Got a little boring towards the end, but I enjoyed it. Then I read Love and Luck, which is like part of that little like Love and Olives, Love and Gelato series. It wasn't one of my favorites. I think I would say this is my least favorite out of the trilogy. And it just felt a little boring to me. It took place in Ireland though, so if you're thinking of like taking a trip there, read it because they give really great like destinations, vacation planning vibes. I just didn't really love it because the love story was actually non-existent. Like if you're going into it for a love story, just don't. Then I reread my favorite book out of the Four Kingdoms series, which was my favorite. When I was like 12, 13, before I really got into reading, these were the first books that really got me back into reading. So I reread this book over the summer on vacation in Disney World. Gave me Disney vibes. It's a very long series, so if you're gonna read any, I'd say read this one. Another huge accomplishment for me, I actually finished Rule of Wolves. This book is just like a brick. This book took me about 2 years in total to finish. Like, I put it down, would pick it back up. I had to reread it twice, like start over from the beginning twice, because I couldn't really remember what was going on. It was very boring. I didn't actually give it a rating because I didn't like it and I felt bad because I love Lee Bardugo and I love this series, like the whole Gracioverse universe. So I felt bad and I didn't give it a rating because I could not bring myself to give it like a 1 star. Then I read in the summer as well Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book really grew on me. I started it like the first chapter and then I put it down for a year because I didn't like the first chapter, but I continued with it and I loved it. I think it gives the best beach vibes. Read this on the beach. I don't think you'll be disappointed by it. It was very like heartfelt, deep romance vibes and it wasn't cringy. Then I read What Happens After Midnight, which was K.L. Walther's new release this year. She actually re-released Maybe Meant to Be, which I also read. We'll talk about that later as well. But I read What Happens After Midnight, like as soon as it was released in the summer, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars, so not as high as I rated either Maybe Meant to Be or The Summer of Broken Rules. So I would say it is my least favorite out of all the books she's written, but that does not mean in any way that it's bad, and I know a lot of people who say that it's their favorite out of all the books she's written. It really gave Gilmore Girls vibes. Like Rory and Logan, they are the main couple. Then I read The Love Wager, which is Lynn Painter. I don't think this one's YA though. So basically they meet at a wedding and they like spend the night together and then part ways. And then they meet on a dating app and keep like encouraging each other to go on dates, but really they should be ending up together. I ended up giving this 4 stars instead of 5 simply because the ending was very unbelievable and the miscommunication was getting very annoying. But everything up until the 80% mark I loved and would give 5 stars. The ending I would probably give 3. So averaged out and everything, I gave it 4. Love and Olives was the next book I read. This was my favorite, I think, out of all of the Love and series. Took place in Greece, gave Mamma Mia vibes, and I read this on vacation in Wildwood and absolutely ate it up on the drive down. I think I finished it on the drive down, which is impressive. So kind of a fast read for being such a brick of a romance novel. Then I read Malibu Rising. We're getting into like the end of summer at this point. Malibu Rising was so good. It's very depressing and I don't recommend this to anybody who can't handle like triggery subjects, so look up trigger warnings and everything. But this book was so good. It made me cry. I read it on the beach and I discussed it with my cousin actually because she loved this book and had read it before me. Definitely going to invoke deep conversations. Then I read We Were Liars. I can't believe I read this book for the first time last year simply because I feel like I've known this book for my entire life. I just went back and annotated it and reread it for the first time and look at those tabs. Isn't that so beautiful? Oh my god, this is my favorite book I read this year. If you're gonna take any recommendation from this video, read this book. This is the most heartbreaking, lyrically written book I have ever read. It crushed my soul into a million pieces and didn't put it back together. Literally underlined every single sentence when I went back and annotated this book. It is becoming a show, filming in 2024, and you have no idea how excited I am for this. Then I read Family of Liars, which honestly, part of me wants to say it was better than We Were Liars, but We Were Liars is kind of the introduction for me, so I can't really say that. But this book was so good. Equal, if not better, than We Were Liars. And it's about the mom and her sisters from We Were Liars. So, generational type of thing. So good. It gives like the best Lana Del Rey summer vibes, but then the ending of each book is so toxic and like, what did I just read? Then I read The 10,000 Doors of January. Honestly gave this book 1 star. Absolutely could not get through it. I did finish it, but I wanted to DNF it, and I'm making that a goal for this year. I'm gonna DNF books when I want to DNF them. It was like historical fiction, but I don't think it was done in a way that I personally enjoy. There were these portals that were doors, and the title is 10,000 Doors of January. She literally maybe went through 2, and I didn't connect to any characters. Like I had nothing basically tying me to this book. I read Enola Holmes. This was my first Enola Holmes book. I got this book a super long time ago in Wildwood. Randomly picked it up because I liked the movie. I think I would say that I liked the movie better simply because it just portrayed everything in a more understanding way. Like I could understand it better. That's what I'm trying to say. This book is actually the last one in the series. It was the only one they had at the store, and I don't see myself reading any of the other ones, but it's a cute, cozy mystery, and I recommend it for younger kids, like younger teens, preteens. Then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Ballad of Never After. I cannot wait to read A Curse for True Love. I got it for Christmas. I'm so excited. I feel very behind the trend. I feel like everyone's read it. Have not read it yet, but I am going to in 2024. Loved these books. Gave fairy tale retelling vibes. I like this one a slight bit more than this one. They aren't 5-star reads for me. I think I might have given this one 5 stars, but you know how you have certain 5-star reads that you're like, I think about it all the time. I honestly don't think about these all the time, so I don't think I get the hype as much as certain other people I've seen on the internet, but I really did enjoy these books, and I think if you like fairy tale retellings, Alice in Wonderland vibes, give it a try. Then I read The Naturals and Killer Instinct. Loved these books, some of my favorites of the year, also by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, who wrote the Inheritance Game series. Literally love her so much. These books gave like FBI Criminal Minds. Loved these books, and I can't wait to continue the series in 2024. Then I read Stalking Jack the Ripper, actually for an English project that I'm currently writing right now, and I annotated it because we were supposed to annotate it, and I absolutely loved it. It gave me so much content for my paper, so if you're ever in a position where you have to choose a historical book to write a paper on, I recommend this one. Then I read the entire Throne of Glass series, except for Kingdom of Ash. I'm in the middle of Kingdom of Ash right now, but I read all of these, and then also Assassin's Blade, which I don't have right here because Rachel's borrowing it and she's going on her little Throne of Glass journey right now, and I'm so happy for her. My favorite Sarah J Maas books, I haven't read Crescent City, and I don't think I ever will. I mean, never say never, but I'm a Throne of Glass girly through and through. I'm also hoping to do a Throne of Glass reading vlog. I've been filming my process of reading them and like my thoughts during each book, so I have all the clips. If they end up working out, I'm going to do an entire like read the Throne of Glass series with me, spoiler free, with a spoiler section at the end video. I actually read 3 of these. I don't have the second one because I borrowed it from Rachel. This was Rachel and I's favorite series. Like, it's a little fairy tale retelling series from when we were little. We didn't know each other back then, but we both loved these books separately on our own, and then we kind of like borrowed each other's books that we didn't have from when we were little and read a couple of them at the beginning of the school year. Then I read To Kill a Mockingbird for English this year. This was the first English book that we finished in 10th grade, so this year. It was okay. It was better than some of the other books that I've read for school, but I ended up giving it 2 stars, and it was a little bit boring. So not really my thing, but I can see how people love it, and I see how my English teacher loves it because it's definitely the kind of book that you can study for a very long time. Then I read Little White Lies, which I borrowed from Bestie Olivia, and I gave it 4 stars. It's probably my least favorite out of all of the Jennifer Lynn Barnes books I've read, but I will recommend anything that she's ever written because she's a great author, and I did enjoy this book. It gave like rich Gossip Girl vibes, but a little less toxic than Gossip Girl. But also The Summer I Turned Pretty with like the debutante ball and everything. Then I read Maybe Meant to Be by K.L. Walther, which was her re-release. She changed the cover or something with it. I enjoyed it. Not as much as I enjoyed The Summer of Broken Rules, but more than I enjoyed What Happens After Midnight. This book gave me Gossip Girl and Gilmore Girls vibes put together, while What Happens After Midnight gave me Gilmore Girls vibes, and The Summer of Broken Rules gave me The Summer I Turned Pretty vibes. So that's what you need to know. Then I read The Brothers Hawthorne, which I'm loaning out to Bestie Olivia right now. Also, I loaned out Maybe Meant to Be to Rachel. Forgot to mention that, but I don't have like any of these books with me right now. So I'm loaning The Brothers Hawthorne to Livia right now, and I'm very curious to see what she thinks. Everyone's been saying that they hate it, but I feel like if you're a huge fan of the Inheritance Game series, like I personally am and my friends personally are, I think you're gonna love it because it's kind of like a little bonus content, like added bonus series that she's writing right now. And I have to say, Jameson's POV, much more interesting than Grayson's, and it's not just because I'm Team Jameson. His also took place in London, so maybe I was biased, I don't know. And I don't really understand the amount of hate surrounding it because I loved it. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars because it's a Roman Empire series for me, honestly. Then I read Tessa and Weston, The Best Christmas Ever. We're getting into the Christmas months. We're literally almost done with these books, but this one was another reread for me, and I loved it. It was so cute. I actually enjoyed it a lot more the second time that I read it. I read it with my mom, and it was just such a cute little wholesome experience. I love Abby Emmons, and I'm so excited to read her new book, The Other World. She is a self-published author. Please go buy her books. They are so cute. She wrote 100 Days of Sunlight, which is one of my favorite romances of all time. Her books are like so deep, but also so cute. Like, it's a good balance. Then I read All I Want for Christmas, also with my mom. We read it together. This was another reread for me. Literally my favorite Christmas book I've ever read. I recommend it to anyone looking for a Christmas romance book. It was rom-com that was kind of cringy, but like in a good way. It gives me all the holiday feels, and the author actually reposted my story on Instagram. Almost died for a second. Then I read So This Is Christmas. Didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars, kind of average for me. Took place in kind of a boring town. Like, I was expecting it to take place in like the South, like in like a cute little southern town. Wasn't giving that. Like, it was a southern town, but it was kind of like tumbleweeds are rolling by boring, which I didn't love. But the romance was cute and the guy was British, so I gave it 3 stars. The last book I read, which was the book I finished on New Year's Eve, and I'm actually going back and rereading this with my mom, is New Year's Kiss, which is a book that I've been anticipating reading since last year. On New Year's Eve, like, I wanted to read it for New Year's last year, but I never got a chance to pick it up because I don't think they sell it in a bookstore. I think you have to buy this book from Amazon, which is where I got it. I really enjoyed it, like, surprisingly, for a cute little fluffy rom-com from the same publishers as All I Want for Christmas. If you enjoyed that one, read this one. I really enjoyed it. Like, I gave this book, I want to say I gave this book 5 stars, maybe 4 stars, maybe like 4.5. And it took place at a ski lodge, so really cute. I recommend anything from that publisher, underlined. I loved it. Those were all the books I read this year. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Coming on a little tour of my bookshelf, or what I read in 2023. I'm very excited for 2024. Thank you guys so much for watching this super long video, and thanks for sticking with me. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you enjoy any of these books and like hearing me talk about them. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and I will see you in the next one.